also two of the mothers of two of the victims in this case, Your Honor. Shamika Sanders, his mother, and Tamara Perry's mother. When the timing's right, when I'm done, I know that Ms. McPherson would like to speak on their behalf, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, back on the morning of Wednesday, July 15th, just last month, the Orangeburg County Sheriff's Office was called to 7050 Old State Road here in Holly Hill in Orangeburg County for a home invasion that involved a quadruple homicide and the attempted murder of an 8-year-old boy. This is a home where not only the defendant resided, but also his fiancée at the time, Ms. Crystal Hutto, and three of his children, Dreams Nelson, Shamika Sanders, and Tamara Perry. Unfortunately, this is also a home where the state police will be able to prove that the defendant sold illegal drugs out of, which put the lives of these children in danger. In fact, it is evident from the crime scene that whoever broke into it was probably looking for drugs, money, and possibly even weapons, guns. The defendant, apparently, according to his own statements, he was not there during the time of the home invasion. Ms. Crystal Hutto was shot one time in the head. Shamika Sanders was shot execution style one time in the head. She died at the scene. Tamara Perry was shot one time in the head, execution style, died at the scene. Dreams Nelson, 8 years old, was shot one time in the head and somehow has survived that. Sheriff Ravenel has kept me abreast as to his condition. The sheriff has visited Dreams on more than several occasions, and it is incredible how well he is doing and how hard he has fought to live. Your Honor, at this time the state would ask that the defendant's bond be denied on these charges. He is mainly due to his prior record. He is a danger to the community. His prior record shows that he is a career drug dealer, and also due to the severity of these charges. I mean, just the fact that one of these charges carries 25 to 30 years shows that he could be a flight risk. He's looking at spending anywhere from 25 years to the rest of his life in prison. Looking at the defendant's, and one other thing I need to point out, and I'll point this out again, he was actually out on bond for 2 violent crimes, while we believe we could prove he was committing another violent crime, this drug trafficking charge, before the court today, and I'll talk about that a little bit more at length. The defendant's prior record, Your Honor, it appears that he has served most of the last decade in prison or jail. Even prior to that, back in 1997, he was arrested by the Highway Patrol for possession with intent to distribute cocaine. He was convicted in 1999 and received a 5-year sentence, suspended to 3 years probation. In 1998, he was arrested by the Orangeburg County Sheriff's Office for possession of cocaine. Again, he received YOA probation in 1999. In 2000, he was convicted of disorderly conduct, and he also had his YOA probation revoked that year, and he went to prison. In 2002, he was convicted of distribution crack cocaine, received a 5-year prison sentence for that. In 2008, his parole was again revoked, which again I submit goes to his inability to interact in society and do well in society. He had his parole revoked and went back to prison. In 2009, Your Honor, he was convicted of distribution of cocaine, second offense, and received a 5-year prison charge. Just this past July, I can't remember the exact date, I think it was July the 16th, he was before Your Honor after being served with 2 warrants for trafficking and crack cocaine. Those charges are also third offenses, carry a 25 to 30-year mandatory minimum. The defendant, I believe, received a $30,000 bond, which at that time, both the state and the sheriff's office felt was a very reasonable and good bond by this court. Because if you may recall, one of the reasons the defendant wanted a low bond and wanted to get out was, I believe he said he wanted to go to his fiance's funeral and he wanted to visit his son in the hospital. And of course he wasn't selling drugs anymore. Well, Your Honor, he didn't do any of those things, but he did continue, as we will prove in court later, to sell drugs even after he got out on that bond. It is my knowledge, and maybe I'm wrong, he can point it out, that he has not even gone to visit his son yet at the hospital. While the sheriff has gone on more than 3, 4, 5 occasions, the defendant has not gone. And that was one of the reasons he wanted to bond. That's why I bring that up. The current charges, Your Honor, talk about those just very briefly. The trafficking and crack cocaine charge. The state believes we will be able to prove the defendant continued to sell drugs. This has been a continuing effort by the defendant for many years, being a drug trafficker. And that warrant before the court is from January the 1st through yesterday's date. We will prove that even after he got out on that $30,000 bond, he continued to sell crack cocaine and other drugs to other people. We can prove it through witnesses. We can prove it through surveillance. In fact, when they went to arrest the defendant in Manning yesterday, he had drug scales and, I say possible, potential residue on a table from where he was.
We're well aware, there's a lot of, obviously, news media that's covered this event in Holly Hill. It's the most tragic event. And, I can tell you that my client, as a father of these children, has significant concerns. He arrived at the scene. He's the first to come on the scene. He's the one who called 911. He had to see this very unfortunate event. He was the first one to see it, I believe. And, when he called 911, he was immediately detained. The charges for which the solicitor's office has said, that he's out on bond for were some older charges. I think they were either 2013 or 2012 charges. He was booked for those charges on that day, and that's when he later bonded out for that $35,000 bond. Since that time, I can tell you he has talked to at least 4 different investigators. He has taken a lie detector test. He has, I've met with him. I've met with, a number of people from the Holly Hill area. We have forwarded names to, I personally have forwarded names and information to 4 different investigators for possible, leads. What, the investigators seem to be determined that this was an act directed at my client. So therefore the most important people would be anybody that you would think had an issue with you personally. I can tell you he's charged with an offense that would suggest he did not cooperate with law enforcement. I would say his cooperation is borderline crossing a line where it jeopardizes him, considering he's getting charged with certain offenses, even offenses related to this crime scene. But nonetheless, his number one concern is whoever killed these kids, he thinks they need to be punished. And he, we have utmost confidence. We've got wonderful law enforcement that are working on this case. Obviously they can't tell us what the current status of that investigation is, but they do tell us they've got great leads. Maybe his leads didn't pan out, but maybe, then again, Your Honor, maybe the motivation for this is something other than directed toward Mr. Wright. Is it may pan out, but I can tell you that to charge him with this offense, to suggest that he's not cooperated, I would say is totally improper. Obviously they're going to present what has been misdirection, but his attempt has been to share everything I know so that any possible lead can be sought out. So that's one warrant he's charged with. The other warrants, as I read them, these child endangerment warrants, these arise from this so unfortunate incident where I don't think it's, at this point, it's undisputed that Mr. Wright, he wasn't at this house. He wasn't, these children weren't in his care at the time. Obviously, the state may pursue the suggestion that the kids were somehow connected or somehow exposed to activity prior to this, but the most harmful thing, this unfortunate event that was described not only from the solicitor but also from the victim's advocate, they weren't in his care at this time. He was at another house, and the final warrant, which I understand that Solicitor Pasco will amend this warrant, but it is a warrant for a first offense trafficking, okay? So you are setting bond, and albeit it may be a scrivener's error or something, and that's something I don't want to make a big deal over right now. I'm not trying to offend him by saying that, but it is a warrant. The warrant you're making a bond on is not a third offense. It is a first offense. And it relates, it says that between January 1st of 2015 and August 5th of 2015, he did knowingly possess more than 10 grams. He wasn't stopped when he was arrested. He was walking back from a convenience store. He didn't have any drugs on him then. He didn't, the residence that they claim he was staying at that point had no drugs in it. The only residence that I think is being claimed that had drugs in it was where this most unfortunate event occurred, which again, there's no suggestion that my client, Mr. Wright, was there on this night. We don't, we can say lots of things could possibly have happened, but right now he's cloaked in innocence according to the law.